RugbyRenegade.com, the #1 online strength and conditioning program for rugby. Are you ready to get bigger, stronger, fitter, and faster and dominate your opposition? Welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast, where we build machines.
Hello and welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Pro Athlete Supplementation. Check them out at pas-nutrition.co.uk for all your supplementation needs. And don't forget that subscribers to the Rugby Renegade program get a 40% discount on retail prices. Yes, hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Rugby Renegade Podcast. My name is Jamie Bain and today I'm joined by Jon Williams, nutritionist with WRU, British and Irish Lions, the Welsh Regions and tons more, and obviously director at PAS Nutrition. Obviously sponsors the podcast. We've been trying to get him on for a long time and he's a very busy guy. Obviously he's managed to find time while on camp with Wales in the autumn, so really lucky to get a chance to speak to him, and there's tons of great information obviously about nutrition and training, so I'm sure you'll take a lot from this. So, leave a bit of time to have a good old listen and take notes. Hi, Jon. Welcome to Rugby Renegade Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on. I mean, we've been trying for a while, but obviously you're a very busy man, as you'll allude to when you start telling us about who you're working with and stuff. And obviously you're in the middle of camp with Wales now. So thank you for making the time for us. Why don't we start by you just sort of telling us your role with the WRU and the other people you're working with at the moment.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Jamie, and thanks, Rugby Renegade, for inviting me on. So my current role is with the Welsh Rugby Union as a performance nutritionist, and I've been with them for the last 8 years now. Originally started off as the academy nutritionist, and then sort of became the main nutritionist, which was an all-encompassing role, looking after the senior squad and the age grades. Now I'm lucky enough to have an assistant, Chris Edwards, who looks after the age grades, the sevens. Funny enough, my daughter, Chanel, has just started actually looking after the women's nutrition. So I'm creating a bit of a family business here, I think. But that's my main role in terms of performance nutrition for the Welsh Rugby Union, but it also encompasses my work with the 4 regions, the Blues, the Dragons, the Scarlets and the Ospreys. So I work with them as well, and to me that's a big part of the role, and I think it's quite unique really, that allows me to work with the players outside of camp, and I believe that's where we can make the biggest changes and also have the biggest impact. So when we arrive at camp time at Autumn International or Six Nations, we should have the players exactly where we need them to be. That's my main sort of philosophy within the WRU is working with the players on a weekly basis, supporting them in terms of their nutritional needs, and so far it seems to be working well. Alongside of that, then I'm the director and co-owner with Darren Campbell of Pro Athlete Supplementation, which we set up 11 years ago now, and that was really just all about supplying professional athletes with performance nutrition products, ensuring everything that we make is batch tested and ultimately informed sport registered and safe to use. And the sort of two work hand in hand. So wherever I'm working, I know I've got access to the products I need for the players.
Yeah, and of course you had some big news in the summer. Obviously your involvement with the Lions. Do you want to sort of tell us a bit about your time with them?
Yeah, that was a little project we got involved with. So, not for us, it was a huge honour. I was involved in the last tour to Australia in terms of my role as a consultant nutritionist, and was involved in terms of all the menu planning, dealing with all the hotels. I did a similar role this year, and we also had the added bonus then that PAS became the official supplier of sports nutrition products. So it was a huge task, not only in organising the menus, because there was a huge amount of travelling, a lot of different hotels, so you're dealing with a lot of different people. But then we actually shipped out all the supplements, all the isotonic drinks and all the water. So we actually filled 2 full containers, which were sent by sea. And obviously to send by sea, you have to send well in advance. Yeah. So in essence, we sent roughly about, I'm trying to think back now, time moves on quick. It was roughly about 15 pallets of supplements, and then about 17 pallets combined of water and isotonic.
Crikey.
So it was a big job, and obviously the other thing was it's not just sending it to port in New Zealand, it's them making sure everything is delivered to each hotel. So the way we work it is every hotel has its own shipment, and then everything is boxed up ready almost on a daily basis. So you've got your recovery shakes already made in shake-and-take single bottles with security lids for post-weights, post-rugby. You've got game day boxes, you've got captain's run boxes, you've got travel boxes, which could be just, again, bars, drinks, food. So everything is done almost to save work the other end.
Yeah.
So when the conditioners are there, it's basically open up a box, you've got your day's needs in it, and that's it. So yeah, it was a big task, but it was a great one to be involved with, and I think ultimately it was definitely a successful tour, and hopefully something we'll be involved with on the next tour. For me, there was a couple of big factors really: the amount of travelling, the time of year, and really focusing on player wellness and making sure players are supported as well as possible. So to help out with that, we designed an immune system product if players did get ill. So it was a combination of echinacea, elderberry, and something called beta-glucans. And if you look individually, each of those has got some valid research in terms of boosting the immune system and reducing risk of upper respiratory tract infections. And what we did, which was quite different, we actually started that on the day the players flew out, and then we maintained that for 5 days after landing. And subjectively, it seemed to work very well. Nobody sort of come down with that dreaded illness you get after a long-haul flight. So that's something now which we're incorporating with the regions as well when they're actually flying out to South Africa. So it's been a good learning curve as well. So yeah, definitely something that was a big task, but one that was definitely enjoyable to see the end result on the pitch.
Oh yeah, definitely, and it's really interesting to hear you. And this is what I like about PAS as a company, is that you develop products actually working with those elite athletes. It's not just this is a product and we'll try and sell it as something elite athletes use. You actually, because you're working with them, you actually do it the right way around, so to speak. So it's really interesting to see how that's actually worked out there with the Lions as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a learning curve for us. I'm fluid. I'm constantly moving in my thoughts and processes, and you have to respond, to what you see in front of you. And one little thing is that, for example, we did the recovery shake of combination of just whey protein, colostrum, and creatine, but no carbohydrate. And I could see some people thinking, you need to give players carbs after training. But you will know exactly where I'm coming from. You've got some carb-phobic players where as soon as you put carbs in a shake, will stay away from it. So traditionally in the past, what I've always done, I've done like just a whey protein shake, but then you'd have an all-in-one type shake, which would be creatine, whey protein, and carbohydrates. But what I've seen over the last year is a number of players who just would not drink that shake because there was carbs in it. Now, first foremost, you try the education process and you explain post-training there's a requirement for those carbs. They're absorbed up into muscle glycogen. It's a great time to reduce your cortisol and every other reason under the sun. But for some reason, some players think, I'm not going to have those carbs there. Now, they may be saving them for their bowl of Frosties or their coffee and their donut later, but for whatever reason, right or wrong, they won't have it. But the big factor I was worried about is they were losing out on their creatine intake. And I think creatine is one of the best supplements, for rugby players. So I come to this scenario, well, if they're not going to drink it because the carbs are in there, I'll fix the problem by taking the carbs out. And lo and behold, everybody started doing it. And I've also done it with the regions this year as well. And I've actually seen some really good gains because people have been taking creatine on a consistent basis. And people are like, I forgot how good creatine was. Because creatine's been around for at least 15, maybe 20 years. And, people tend to forget how good a product it is. And especially if you're not taking it regularly, you're not going to see the benefits. So that was one thing. Another thing, that bespoke blend, and we're actually using that same blend now with the Wales. So we use that after rugby sessions, that creatine colostrum creatine mix. There's fruit available, and if boys do need carbs to go with it. And then post-rugby, we'll just use a protein only. Again, I don't put carbs in there because we're sitting down and feeding them within 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing sometimes is people don't understand really how well elite rugby players get looked after. It's very rarely your recovery shake would be the only source of nutrition. You're probably sitting down and eating within 20 minutes anyway. So there's plenty of opportunity to get those carbs within that meal time.
Yeah, definitely, and that kind of brings me on to the next question is kind of your overall nutritional approach, and sometimes you find people who work with supplement companies, they often go supplements first, but what would you say your approach is? Is it more food first approach?
Yeah. This is where I stand. I'm not food first, I'm not supplement first. I just want everything right. I want everything done for maximum benefit. And to me, the two work hand in hand. So I don't draw the line anywhere. To me, nobody should be a professional athlete if they're not eating right. Nobody should be even thinking I need to focus on getting my food right before I start taking supplements. So I will sit down and start and work through everything and say, this is everything we should be doing. So I don't really even get involved in that. And I find it quite strange sometimes that we even have to have a food first approach. We're all going to eat. We're all going to eat food on a daily basis. And even players who are overweight with body fat issues, they're eating, they haven't got a problem eating. It's not the right thing. But if I can get more buy-in by saying, look, if you take these supplements alongside this diet, if that gets buy-in from the player, I'm happy to do that. So I'll use whatever means I need to get the results with that player. I just don't differentiate. I'll just go in and say, this is what we need to do, and it's a complete package.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Definitely. And this is a question I was going to probably ask later on, but I think you've kind of touched on it a bit now. Obviously, you're saying about players who kind of carbophobic and kind of avoid that sort of thing. How do you deal with players who perhaps try, the latest fad diet or avoid carbs? It's something we've seen a lot with players who, when they're coming to the end of the season, sort of business end of the season, it also comes in line with, coming close to the beach. So they're all trying to avoid carbs to lean up. How do you deal with those sort of things with players?
Yeah, no, look, you need to treat everybody as an individual for a start. No. And that's a big part of my nutrition approach. That it's very hard to give general recommendations, and you need to work with each player in terms of a context of what they're trying to achieve at a specific time. And if cutting carbs just to reduce body fat for vanity reasons means a drop off in performance, and you can't have it, and you need to find a way where you ensure that those muscle glycogen levels are fully loaded for game day. Now, there may be a way that you can actually reduce carbs earlier on in the week and actually get them back up for game day without an effect in performance. But long term, that's not an approach I would use. I've seen players do it, go low, train low throughout the week, and just load up for game day. My big problem with that is that you're not refueling, you're not recovering properly, and when you're in a particular training phase, especially early on in season, you want to be making good adaptations in training. If you're training low all the time, apart from maybe reducing body fat, and if that's the ultimate goal, that's fine, but you're not going to get a big fitness gains by training low. So everything has to be done in the context of what's important at a particular time, and a lot of it is just getting that player's trust in what you're saying, and that takes time to build up. So, if you're starting with a new club, that's a little bit difficult, unless you're going in with a lot of experience and some good results where you can get immediate impact. It takes time to learn players' habits and get players trusting you and get that information across. I think the big problem is there's just too much information out there. Like I said, there's too many keyboard warriors, there's too many videos made by people with no real knowledge, and players pick up on that. And it's all about building relationships and building trust with players. When more often than not, players should be coming to you and asking questions rather than you preaching to players. And if you've got that sort of relationship with your players, then you should be working on a good basis.
Yeah, definitely. And it leads nicely on to the next question, is obviously your time with the Lions. Obviously, you've already built up a great relationship with the Welsh boys and boys in the Welsh regions. How did you find working with the guys from the other, the regions or other international teams and clubs?
No, I found it really good, mate. To be honest, I really enjoyed it. It's great because they were at the Vale for a week, so we had some good time with them there. And I also went up to the first day, the Messy Monday they called it, and spent time talking with players there. Well before the tour actually started, but it's been really good, and a lot of those relationships carry on after tour. So there's a number of players now, I won't go into names, who will be maybe emailing me or speak to me and ask about products they used on tour they found particularly useful, and should they be using them now, or just asking questions. And it's a good opportunity to work with different players. Obviously there's a consultation process as well, with all the nutritionists at the other home nations. So I spoke to all the other guys and girls before tour, and thoroughly went through everything I wanted to do with players, and then fully had really good information off them, and so that made life a lot easier. So by the time I come in with you, you know exactly where you are to go.
Yeah, sounds cool. Now, previously, before your time with rugby, you've had, I think it's 15 years with working in professional football. How is your time working with there? I know you still supply some football teams, and what do you see as the differences as kind of athletes and just individuals as well?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of work in football, predominantly because when I first left university, I don't know who's paying any nutritionist in rugby. It was well before that sort of era had started, so football was the obvious choice to start your career in. I travelled all over the UK, really, working with teams from the Premiership, Championship, down to the Conference. So that was a good learning curve, because you're working with teams with vastly different budgets. So you have to be very inventive in terms of what nutrition provision, in terms of food catering you can put on for players. So that was a challenge. Football players are a different breed, obviously. You haven't got the same demands. You're not trying to smash into each other on a weekly basis, so there's no demand to be so big and powerful and strong. So it's more about fitness, it's more about recovery and wellness as well, really, there. So it is different, and obviously the higher the level you get, the more money there is in football, and when you've got players on huge wages, they're going to eat out 2 or 3 times a week. So then you have to try and get involved in that education process as well. So it is totally different, but it's good. Ultimately, when you're within a team, it's a team environment. It's the same as rugby. It's the same sort of dressing room atmosphere, and you get results by being part of a team. So yeah, currently now I don't do any more travelling. I'm just getting a little bit old in the tooth, probably, to be out in the mornings, 4 or 5 on the road up to Bolton or West Brom. Those days are gone past me for now, anyway. But we still supply over 90 football teams from Premiership, like I say, down to Conference. And I think there's probably only 2 football teams in the Premiership we don't currently supply with any type of product. And many of those teams we've been supplying for 11 years. So the relationships are still there and in place. Obviously, we were the official supplier for Leicester City in the year that they won the Premiership, and we still do a lot of work with Leicester City. And Chris, funny enough, is actually now with the nutritionist for Leicester City as well. So that's working well. So yeah, we've done that over the years, not only provided sports nutrition products, but consultancy service to lots of teams.
Yeah, cool.
It's all part of spreading the word.
Yeah, definitely. And you touched on something there, obviously saying with players kind of eating out a lot. Are there any good tips you could give our listeners on how to eat better when they go to restaurants and stuff like that?
Again, this all comes back into the context of what you're trying to achieve. So, you can usually split into 2 groups, can't you? You can, your bulkers and your sulkers. So if it's rugby, if somebody's looking to gain mass, then it all starts with your protein intake. So if they're going out, where's the protein coming from? Is it your fish? Is it your steak? Is it your chicken? And then you need your carbohydrates with it. Now, obviously, you don't want to be advising on chips as your carbohydrates, so you're looking at better options there. So is it a jack of potato? Is it rice? Is it a pasta dish? If somebody is bulking, I wouldn't worry too much about differentiating between white and whole grain pastas. At the end of the day, you're eating it for carbohydrate value. People get a bit too caught up on that sometimes. It's the carb is the issue, not if it's white or if it's brown. People can overplay that a little bit. The other one I have at the moment is sweet potatoes. A sweet potato fry and a chip is virtually the same thing. There's not a lot of difference between it. So if you go to Carter and Mill and you have sweet potato fries, and you think you're doing the right thing, you still really eating a chip. But anyway, that's another story. Whereas if you're looking to reduce body fat and it's weight reduction, then obviously you need to be filling your plate up with some salad and veg. You need to be eating a good quality source of protein, so it would be fillet steak, or it could be salmon fillets, it could be sea bass fillets. And there, if you don't need the carbs, don't eat it. You definitely don't have dessert, and you just try and fill your plate up with more nutrition. So everything is about what context are the players trying to achieve at that point in time.
Yeah.
And also the player's body type. There's certain players who are very lean, low number of fat cells. They're probably not going to gain body fat whatever they eat. So do they need to really worry and restrict when they're eating out? If it's once a week, I would probably say not.
Yeah.
Whereas there's other people who have to be really on top of the nutrition 24 hours, 7 days a week to see any results. The biggest problem you've got is some people don't like to take that realization on. So they'll think, I've been really good Monday to Friday, so therefore Saturday, Sunday I should be able to eat what I want. But unless genetics are on your side, that doesn't work for everybody. And you can keep fooling yourself and doing it, but if you're not changing, then you have to take that upon the chin, really, and just say, right, okay, I need to be strict 6 days a week, or I need to be strict 7 days a week. If you keep doing the same thing and you're not changing, you got to change. You got to make different changes.
Yeah, it's the definition of insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing, expecting different results.
No, it is, but there's a lot of people doing it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people doing it.
Yeah. So it's probably a good time now. We ask this question to all of our guests on the podcast. Obviously, it's normally aimed at strength and conditioning, but it'd be really good to hear your take nutritionally. And it's what is the biggest mistake that rugby players make when it comes to nutrition?
I think the biggest mistake is sometimes trying to achieve too many things in one go. And this probably doesn't relate to the really genetically gifted player, but for the majority of players, if you're trying to make gains in muscle mass, focus on that. If you're trying to reduce body fat, focus totally on that. Trying to achieve both at the same time usually means you end up going nowhere or making very little changes. So this would tie into training as well. So if you've got a young player, 17 years old, and he needs to add, over the next 2 years, let's say he needs to add 15 kilos really to be where he needs to be. He has to really go for it and work that. So his training has to be specific for that. So as you will well know, there's no point in him trying to run 10K every day if he's trying to build muscle mass. Similarly, you can't try, you may not be able to stay under 10% body fat and have abs all the time. So he needs to actually focus on a plan where he's bulking for a period, he's adding significant amounts of body weight, his training is correct for it, his calorie intake is right, his protein, carbs, fats, his rest is right, and then have an assessment period, and then if necessary, then focus on body fat reduction. But now, especially talking about young rugby players, everybody wants to stay lean, everybody wants to have abs or look good all year round. And everybody wants to perform on the weekend. Everybody wants to, whatever level they're currently at, they want to play well. So it's like, I don't want to put too much weight on because I'll be slow on the weekend. And that's fine if you want to play at that level, but if you want to be a senior international player, by the time you're 20, 21, you need to be a certain size and stature. And I just worried a little bit that people are trying to focus too much on now and not look forward in terms of where they need to be in 2-3 years' time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And now you touched on it before, talking about informed sport. And obviously, it's hugely important for rugby players. Make sure they don't get caught out with any dangerous supplements. Do you want to just talk a bit about that?
Yeah, look, since we set the company up, every batch of every product we've made has been tested, and it's something that I could never do my role as a nutritionist working with a team unless I knew that. So I'm there after the game when the drug testers come in and the players are signing the sheets off. And a player will say to me, "Oh, John, are you sure that Game Ready is tested?" And I just laugh. But if I was a company and just making products and selling it to the general public, I thought, do you know what, for marketing, I'm just going to test it and say it's really helpful and give a little bit out for sport, I wouldn't have the same conscience. If you're working within sport, then you have to make sure you do everything to make sure the products are safe. And that's not just sending off for batch testing. That process starts way before that. So, when I set the business up with Dan Campbell, obviously he's a former sprinter, Olympic sprinter, and it was taking quite a strong stance on drugs. Then, we said whatever we do, we have to do things right. And, if we're making a product, we put the best ingredients in, put the best raw ingredients in. So, for example, with our creatine, we only buy Creator Pure from Germany, which is a highly recognized quality brand. I could get creatine from China at a tenth of the price that we pay for our creatine from Germany. But with it comes risks. And that's not something we're prepared to do. So more often than not, we pay, much more for our raw ingredients to make sure they are of a quality and a spec where we know we're not going to have issues. And then we're just, whenever possible, we make a product informed sport registered, and it's really important your listeners understand there's a difference that PAS is not an informed sport registered company. Each of our products is an informed sport registered company, so each product has to be registered separately.
Okay.
Because one of my big beefs is companies who've got maybe 30 products in their line, and they've got 3 products which are informed sport registered. Yet when you go on their website, they'll have the informed sport logo, plastered all over the website. Yeah. So people will naturally assume, well, it's all informed sport registered. Or they'll think, well, if they're testing some of them, then the others should be all right as well. But it doesn't work like that. Every product that an athlete takes should be informed sport registered or batch tested. If it's informed sport registered, what it means is it'll have been tested 5 times before it becomes registered. So you've got a history of testing of the product there. And then you also agree that the product is tested on a blind basis once a year. So Informed Sport will order the product off the web, or they'll buy it in the shop, and then they'll test it to make sure that what we sent in to be tested is also being sold on the market. And that's really important. Now, every now and then, like the immune support we designed for lions, because there's a very short window and we didn't have a chance to make 5 batches of it, we'll need to bring a product out before we can inform sport register it. But we still test it before we release it. So it's still batch tested, and then ultimately it'll become an informed sport register product on the next run.
Yeah.
But it's the best way for an athlete to minimize his risk. And it's the only way at the moment. And, your listeners need to be reminded there's a 4-year ban if you fail a drugs test now. It's not 2 years anymore, it's 4 years. For most people, that probably will end their career. If you could show that every product you've been taking is informed sport registered, you've done all your due diligence, then if for somehow you tested positive, and obviously it wouldn't be from those products, but if it was for some other reason, which is you're unknown of it, but you've got full due diligence, then you've got a chance, of getting that ban reduced. But if you were just buying product and it's not tested, you're really open to problems. And, there's a risk of 1 in 4 non-tested products being contaminated. 25% is a huge risk.
Yeah.
A huge risk. And sometimes people think, oh, I need some vitamin C, I'll just go to Asda or go to Boots. It's only vitamin C, it's only a fish oil. To me, every supplement can contain a risk. If Asda, Tesco's or whoever are making a vitamin C or a multivitamin, cost is going to be a primary issue for them. So they're going to be making that on a bulk basis. They're not going to be selecting raw ingredients to be as careful as possible. So, the other one is Barocca. Players say, "Oh, I take Barocca."
Yeah.
I said, why do you take it for a start? Is it really giving you anything that you really need? And secondly, it's not enforced sport. It's not batch tested. So sometimes it's a constant education process to get our message across. The players really have to be 100% on top of their game, and ultimately, strict liability always applies. It'll always come back on the player.
Yeah. No, it's a massive issue, and it's commendable that you and Darren have taken that approach and are doing everything you can to make sure your products are well tested and everything. And I assume that's why a lot of people favour you as a company, because they can trust your products. I think that's a massive thing, and definitely we'd say to any athletes looking for supplements, you've got to make sure it's like you said, it's the product, not just the company that's Informed Sport Reg. Make sure everything's good, and they know they get that from you. Yeah. And we mentioned creatine a couple of times. Oh, sorry, Karen.
Yeah, no, just to further illustrate that, it sometimes it's about price for athletes as well. And I understand that, the lower level you go, the less money the players get paid. But ultimately, it can be false economy as well. So I do talks at all levels of rugby clubs, and players will say to me, "Oh, I'm getting a tub of protein from my gym at £20." Well, for me to make my protein, it costs me more than £20 a tub. So there's something going on if somebody can sell you protein and they're making profit on it, and that be less than what I would pay to get it made. Now, more often than not, you're probably not getting what you think you're getting. So it may say it's got 80 grams of protein per 100 grams on the label, but does it really have that in it? There's a lot of instances of companies putting lower levels of protein in, and some have been found to have as low as 20 grams per 100 grams. So, you're having your shakes and you're having a false economy, you're not actually getting good value. Or there's stories as well of people using what I would call inferior sources of protein. So it may say whey protein on the label, but you've actually got it half mixed with maybe soy protein or pea protein, just to make it a lot cheaper. So it's just sometimes if something's too good a price, you need to question it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Now, these are. Oh, sorry, I was saying about creatine. We mentioned it a couple of times. You said very good product, especially for rugby players. The nature of the game, and the need to increase muscle mass and things like that. How what's the best way to use it? Because there's a few different ways touted around on the internet. But what's your recommendation?
Yeah, I don't do the traditional loading phase. I think it's unnecessary in terms of just places an extra burden on the body, really, and any potential issues you see with creatine usually come after a sudden loading phase. So if you're training and you're sprinting and you even just got your rugby training, you probably don't want to see rapid gains in body weight within a few days. So you may gain between 1.5 to 2.5 kilos of body weight with creatine on a loading phase. So the way I tend to do it is a slow load, just 5 grams on a daily basis. It takes about 2 weeks to load up. But I actually like to start players on it in pre-season and then maintain all the way through the season. I don't see any benefit in actually coming off it. Now, the old sort of theory was, I'll take it for a bit, I'll come off it, and then when I go on it, I'll get another boost again. But with creatine, once you increase your creatine phosphate store, and then you top it up on a daily basis, it stays at the same level. Once you stop, it'll go down, and it takes about 3 weeks to go down. But when you go back on, it can only go to the same point.
Right.
So during those 3 weeks where you're actually losing your creatine stores, you get a loss in strength, loss of explosive power, and a loss of lean muscle. So to me, the only time you do that is the off season.
Yeah.
There's no benefit in coming off it in season. So that's what I tend to work with players, and that's why I just put it in now as part of a recovery drink on a once a day basis. We don't see any issue with it like that.
Yeah.
And you're maintaining the benefits all season.
Cool. Awesome. And what are your thoughts on beta-alanine? I've seen stuff saying that if you take it with creatine, there's even better effects, or it's like a synergistic effect. How do you sort of use that with your athletes?
Yeah, I tend to use beta-alanine for sort of 6 weeks prior to Autumn Internationals, prior to Six Nations. In the regions, we would use it over an 8-week block in pre-season, where we're looking to get those gains in terms of fitness. It's a great product. Compliance is a big issue because not everybody likes tingling, paresthesia, which the itches. Some people quite like it. I'm a fan of it before training. It gives you a nice wake up and makes you have to train. You can't really sit around while you're scratching and itching. But in terms of benefits for rugby players, again, there's so many benefits in terms of anaerobic, aerobic, explosive power, repeated high intensity work. It's something players really need to stick with. And a couple of little things: if you always take it on a full stomach, you tend to get less of the tingling effect for a start. And usually after about a week of daily use, that tingling will subside. So usually, I think people, if they can get past that first week, they'll be okay. But you're not going to see the actual benefits in training until about the 4th week.
Yeah.
So it's really given it long enough. It is. The good news is once you've done about 6 to 8 weeks on it, once you stop, you've probably got about 6 weeks where the levels stay elevated, where you get a benefit. So there's a nice carryover.
Yeah.
So you haven't got to stay on it all season. If you can do 8 weeks on, 6 off, and then back on, you'll get some good benefits.
Cool. That's awesome. Right, now these are some questions that we sometimes get athletes asking us. They're kind of common ones, so
yeah.
Thought it'd be good to get them answered. And one is a lot of athletes kind of work a lot on their sort of nutrition plan and get their meals down, and then they tend to struggle with choosing healthy snacks. What are some good options for healthy snacks?
You know what? Like when we're in with Wales, and even with the Lions, we always put a snack on post rugby. But to me, I don't design a snack to be a snack. It's really a small meal.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing is, why can't a snack just be a smaller portion of your evening meal? So if you got salmon and noodles, why can't you just dish up a small portion of that, and that then would be a snack in between meals?
Yeah.
If you made a nice chili and rice with vegetables, that again would be classed as a snack. I think where people go wrong is once they start to try and make things with toast and bagels, and that's where snacks become junk, really.
Yeah.
I think if you focus on meals, mini meals, then you're going to make much better, healthy, balanced snacks. In every meal and every snack, you look in your protein element, carbohydrate element based on your requirements, and then maybe some good fats, and then if needed, you bulk it up a little bit with salads or veg. So the essence of a snack is the same as a meal. So if you start off with that thought process, then it's fine. You can make life easy for yourself. You can do cold meats, maybe some avocado and some salad, and make some wraps, little things like that. Trying to think of some good examples which are quick and easy to do. The easy ones, if you want more specific type snack meals, are Greek yogurts with some berries and then some nuts. That's a decent combination as well. But I really try and get away from just working on snacks, because I think people overeat on them and just work more on a mini meal.
Yeah.
And I think that way it's better. So that's the advice I would give on that, mate.
No, so it's a good way to look at it, definitely. And another question we get a lot is around sort of a match day nutrition approach and what supplements to take sort of before and during matches, half time and things.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So again, this match day nutrition should backtrack a little bit really from your training week. So the first thing is you should be refueling your glycogen stores throughout the week. So it shouldn't all be about loading up either the night before or loading up on game day. Really with game day, you're just topping your stores up. Your glycogen stores won't be empty come breakfast on game day. So there's not that need to go massive. I remember years ago I was asked to do some work with Coventry Rugby Club, and first day there, I was going through their game day routines, and the player said, well, we currently each get given a bag of donuts on the way to the game to carb up. So I started laughing. I didn't think it was serious, to be honest, but it was. And I said, all right, how would you feel at kick-off? And his figure said, I feel a little bit heavy. I said, I bet you do. I said, all that carbs, all those sugars, I said, you serotonin release. So anyway, I changed that, and they went on something like a 20 match unbeaten run. Now, I don't think it was just changing the donuts, but it was a nice story anyway. But yeah, sometimes players get a little bit carb crazy game day, or maybe use it as an excuse the night before to have that healthy pizza, that spaghetti bolognese with garlic bread, that apple crumble, that type of thing. And look, I'm fine with players feeling good and making themselves happy the night before, but you don't want to go crazy and put a lot of food in your body that your body's not used to. You want your digestive system working well on game day and not being overloaded. So with us, with breakfast, we'll stick with a similar breakfast that we have on a daily basis. There'll be omelets, there'll be scrambled egg, there'll be wholemeal toast, there'll be porridge, there'll be fruit options. So, similar sort of breakfast to every day, really. And a big thing I try and get players to do is keep their protein up on game day. I think game day protein intake can drop off hugely, and if you think of the soft tissue contact damage, then protein intake is a massive one for repair and recovery, and also maintaining lean muscle as well. So I try and keep protein intake up on game day. So pre-match meal with between 3 and 3.5 hours before. Again, you'd have a range of different protein options. We tend to put sea bass fillets out because they're very nice and light. We'll have a lean steak mince, bolognese, so there'll be fresh egg pasta to go with that. One thing you should never do if you're a player is make pasta, let it cool down and eat it cold, especially game day. When the pasta cools, the bonds in the carbohydrate make it very hard to break down, and it's not really going to give you that energy. So if you're going to have the pasta, make sure it's cooked and eaten fresh. Don't cool it down and try and reheat it after. Yeah. That's just going off the tangent a little bit. So most players then will top up, not eat huge pre-matches. I do put things like a little bit of rice pudding on, fruit and yogurts if players don't actually want a typical type meal. And I also make a pre-match smoothie. So again, depending on the game, usually the bigger game, the less players want to eat. So pre-match smoothies which will be banana, oats, protein, honey, blended up. I actually use coconut milk, so I stay away from normal cow's milk in pre-match, just in case you've got any who's lactose intolerant or slightly lactose intolerant. So I just had Charlotte's calling me. I think they need stock for South Africa. So pre-match is really probably just that top up, really, not to gorge, just to top up to make sure you're ready to go. And then in terms of once you get to the game, then you've got your caffeine type supplements, which should be taken about sort of half hour before the game, and those will cover you for the 2 hours of the game based on the life of caffeine in the body. Now, caffeine dose is quite individual, and there's some stuff coming out based on your genes, which is quite interesting as well on your response to caffeine. That might be worth people looking at, but usually that's just knowing what works for you, and find out what works for you and stick with it. Don't just think the bigger the game, I'll put an extra scoop of caffeine in or take an extra caffeine gum. Just work with what works for you. So we use the Game Ready, which has got 300 milligrams of caffeine, which is a good dose. Some players will top up with a caffeine gum as well then, or a gel at half time. Half time, I'd encourage the use of a gel, but obviously you need to take some fluids on as well. Beetroot shots we use a little bit. They've sort of gone out of vogue a little bit. When they first come in, they were really popular, but now I've probably only got like 2 or 3 players in a squad use them. For some people, they seem to work really well, so it's a good option to have. And then you've obviously got your electrolyte drinks at half time, and then you move it into the recovery phase afterwards.
Yeah. No, cool. I'm glad you mentioned the smoothies, because that's often an issue you have with people. Some players get really nervous and prefer not to eat at all, so that's a good kind of option for them. Last sort of question we get quite a lot is diet during injury. So, people they're obviously not training as much, but they want to maintain their muscle mass and also want to heal as quick as possible. So what are your suggestions with your injured athletes?
Yeah. Obviously, the standard goal is maintain muscle and reduce or prevent any body fat accumulation. But again, it's just take it back to the individual and you're talking at. So if you've got a player who's very lean, then your advice would be very different to a player who's carrying a lot of body fat already.
Yeah.
So if he's already very lean, obviously for both players, you maximize protein intake, and you probably go up to around 3 grams per kilo. So for 100 kilo player, you're looking at 300 grams of protein a day, which is, so take some eating or combination of food and shakes to get that level. But at that level, you're going to minimize any muscle losses. Depending on the injury, some muscle losses are always going to happen. Just to inactivity. And one thing I would work on is if you've got a player who has got body fat issue already, then I would rather he gets lighter but leaner during that phase, rather than keeps his weight on by just accumulating body fat. And it's how many players or even coaches will say, "Oh look, I know he's injured, but I don't want him losing any weight."
Yeah.
Now, if you've got if you're totally immobilized in your lower body and you can't do any squats, any lifting or whatever, you're going to lose some muscle. Your legs are a big muscle group. You're going to lose some. So no matter how much you can gain in the upper body, you're probably still going to be coming down a little bit. And it's just an education process. I have to say, look, he's kind of a bit of body fat already. There's no point me keeping his calories high, overfeeding him, and him just getting fatter just to maintain a weight on the scale. He's better getting a little bit leaner, a little bit lighter, restricting his calories. Then once he can start normal training, then I can give him those calories, and then he'll gain weight very well. He'll gain muscle better. So I think that's quite important, is to really fix those priorities, those goals for that individual. And then you can tailor the carb intake, the calorie intake to go along with that protein intake.
Yeah.
So again,
go on, Karen.
Go on, Ed. Yeah.
I was going to say you're right. If you've got someone with a lower limb injury and they've put on body fat and lost lean mass, that's harder for them to come back from the injury. There's more stress going through, say, if it's in the joint, if it's a knee injury or something like that. So it makes sense that you can keep that body weight down, or certainly the body fat down, and it just makes everything easier coming back. There's less load going through a weakened joint, so to speak.
Yeah, no, exactly. It all ties in. Yeah. So, supplement-wise, then in terms of, again, it would depend on what the injury is. So there's some work out there at the moment in terms of gelatin and collagen, in terms of tendons, ligament healing. In terms of maintaining muscle, I've always said, look, I would stay on the creatine because it keeps the muscle volumized. When the muscle's volumized, this sends signals. It doesn't increase the uptake of aminos or glucose to feed the muscle. I have seen research has shown taking creatine while injured didn't actually prevent muscle loss, but it's not going to accelerate it by any means. And while you're focusing on other muscle groups where you're looking to maximize muscle gain, it makes sense to take creatine. So I would stay on creatine. You may take a higher dose of fish oils if you're trying to reduce inflammation in certain areas. That might be beneficial. It all really depends on the injury itself.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Bone injuries, you're going to need to make sure your vitamin D, vitamin K, the calcium intake are where they need to be. So that's a key one to focus on with the bone injuries. So yeah, there's a lot you can do nutritionally, a lot you can do during the injury phase, and a big part of it is maintaining motivation with the player as well. So, if it's a long injury, it's very easy for a player to become demotivated. Whereas if you've got specific goals and aims and you give him, a focus, it'll help him along.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So I guess the question now is, what's next for PAS? You're working with Wales, a lot of regions, a lot of football clubs, and the Lions. What's your sort of plan for the future?
Yeah, I think for us, it's going out to the big audience really, and crossing over. I think we haven't saturated professional sport by any means, but we're definitely well known. We've definitely got our foot in the door, and we're happy where we are there. We'd really like to be able to use our products and let everybody benefit from them as well, rather than just being for professional sport. So we're looking at a couple of things at the moment. So we've got our drinks listed with Morrison's and Co-op, and we're talking to other options with protein bars and trying to get the rest of the range introduced across the UK. So I think next year is going to be a really big year for us. There's a lot of energy here to really maximise what we've learned over the last 11 years in pro sport, to use the knowledge, the relationships and the experience and take that out there and really make PAS a brand that's known across the UK. So yeah, it's an exciting time, and I'm always working on new products. I'm always sitting there and coming up with ideas. So I've got a few in the pipeline. So yeah, we should have probably 3 or 4 new products out next year as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, look forward to that. And where can people learn more about yourself and PAS, obviously?
Just come to the website, pas-nutrition.co.uk. Obviously, we've got a Twitter feed as well, at Pro Athlete Subs. I believe we've got an Instagram page as well, but I'm not involved in that, so I draw the line at Twitter for me. That's enough social media work for a man of my age to be involved with.
Oh, cool. And of course, we'll share links to those. We'll include your Instagram as well. We'll share links to those on the show notes. But Jon, thank you. It's been great to chat to you, and I'm sure the listeners will got obviously loads of information there, practical information they can apply to their nutrition approach and their training. So really appreciate that. And you'll have to do us a favour and get Darren to come on the podcast with us eventually as well.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to do that, Jim. I'm sure he'd be happy to do that.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Jon. Again for making the time while you're busy in camp, and all the best with the autumn internationals.
No worries. Thank you, James. Cheers. Thanks. Bye.
So there you go, a great podcast, and thank you, Jon, for taking the time to talk to us. I'm sure our listeners will get tons out of that, and there's loads of information there for them to get their nutrition on track and help improve their performance on the field. So thanks again, and of course in the meantime, subscribe to us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, whatever, and please give us a 5-star review, and of course check us out on social media. Loads of stuff going on, and of course more articles at the website rugbyrenegade.com. Keep checking us out there, and of course don't forget that members to the subscription program at the website get a 20% discount on PAS supplements retail price, so of course check that out. But more podcasts on the way, so stay tuned.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. For more quality rugby strength and conditioning information, check us out at rugbyrenegade.com. Rugby Renegade, building machines.